I think this must be the thing. I think this must be the place. The secret's already been revealed if you can read the title card, which of course presumes that you are able to read and that you do read the English language. And I don't want to be presumptuous in any way, shape, or form. Let's just say you have the ability to read and that you do speak the English language. The secret has been revealed. The man behind the title card is indeed myself, Malcolm Tent. And as the title card says, as the t-shirt says, as I says, this is Tent Talks Tunes. You see it on the shirt. You just saw it on me hands. We are here. It is Wednesday, the day of Wedness. We are live on the Facebook. Unless, of course, you're watching the rerun on my YouTube channel, or you're watching the archived copy on my Facebook page. Either way, good to have you all on board. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Standard practice, I have to reach over and scroll down a little bit on my computerized monitor to make sure that the signal is going out and that everybody is receiving it loud and clear. The signs look very promising so far. I will say that the technology has evolved quite a bit from when I first started doing this full time about 3 years ago. 3 years ago, man, it was a mess. If any of you guys were watching back then and remember, we were always having freeze-ups and dropouts and loss of signal. It's definitely a lot more stable than it used to be. So that's cool. But I'm from the generation that was there for the basically every early development of computerized technology that there has been. The people of my generation, the Gen Xers, were there for it and had to suffer through all the growing pains. Like I have vivid memories of working on Word documents that would just spontaneously disappear. You would save them, but they wouldn't get saved. They'd just vanish. Emails that would just disappear into the ether. You'd send them and they would vanish. Programs that were constantly crashing. Trying to burn a CD and have it get to the 99% success mark and then all of a sudden just fail. I remember all that stuff. And there were certainly enough hiccups when we first started doing Tent Talks Tunes on the internet to where I'm not forgiving the internet for the problems it caused me back then. No forgiveness. No wiggle room. No mercy. Having said that, it's been working pretty good lately. And who do we have here that will bear witness to my statement? We got Moose Roberts from Bristol. Jay Gray is in the house. Per from Sweden. Sean from Connecticut. Alan Versapellis. Mr. James Pogo, also from Connecticut. Good to have you guys on board. And I can see by the little icon in my upper left-hand screen that there's other people watching too. I just don't know your names. But thanks for being here. Man, I am not going to be here next week, and that is a direct segue into checking out the bulletin board. You might wonder, gee whiz, Malcolm Tent, how come you're not going to be here next week? Well, I got to rock and roll all night and party every day. Yeah, every day. Rock and roll all night and party every day. Of course, my idea of a party is to make a nice big smoothie, an organic vegan smoothie with delicious cocoa powder, and drink it, and have a nice orange or an apple or some fresh grapes with it. That's my party. That's how I party every day. And that's why I'm able to continue to rock and roll all night. Yeah. The bulletin board. I'm not going to be here next week because of the events I'm going to point out. And I look at the monitor also, and I see that my angle is just a little bit off. So let's adjust ever so slightly so you people can see what it is on the bulletin board and hopefully read it. It's very funny. I set this thing up every single week, And it's never the same way twice. I got the same tripod, same camera, same desk, same chair, same backdrop. I put it in the same spot. It's different every week. I have to go through a lot of pains to adjust this camera every single week. Proving once again that chaos is the natural order of the universe. And you can quote me when I say that order is merely a snapshot of chaos. I should print that out in big bold letters and pin it to ye bulletin board just so everybody can remember that and apply it to their own daily lives. Order is merely a snapshot of chaos. So what kind of chaos are we about to indulge in that's going to preclude my presentation of Tent Talks Tunes next week? Well, let me tell you right now. Boom! Anti-Scene, making an incursion north of the Mason-Dixon line. Yes. April 4th at the Underground Arts in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We're going to be part of the Eat the Turnbuckle Final Bloodbath Battle Royal Extravaganza. It is Anti-Scene. It is Eat the Turnbuckle. It is Fang. It is Ringworm. It is almost sold out, according to late arriving intelligence. So if you're going to make the trek to Philly to see this thing, you might want to make sure you got tickets in hand already, because as Jeff Clayton said last night on his live show, Break On Through, they're down to the last couple dozen. So as awesome as we are, as awesome as the other bands are, as completely insane as the headliners promise to be, I think you don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss that. You don't want to miss the cleanup gigs, guys. April 5th in Youngstown, Ohio at the West Side Bowl. We're on top for that one. And I am absolutely delighted to report that my good friend Poopy Necropond from Sockeye, and if you people out there appreciate your ridiculous, insane, absurd noise bands, Sockeye are the king of the heap. Poopy has got another band called Muzzle, and Muzzle is just straight ahead punk rock. And I got to tell you guys right now, I am all about the new blood. I dig the new breed. It's the young blood that makes things move forward and breaks new ground and makes things happen. But I am always extremely fond of we, the old people, who play the punk rock and the hardcore, because we've been around the block a few times, and I think we know how to do it, and we know how to do it well, which is why I'm definitely stoked to have Muzzle on the bill with Anti-Scene in Youngstown, Ohio. There's, I think, 2 other bands, don't recall exactly, but for me, Anti-Scene and Muzzle are enough of a draw to make you want to go to York, Pennsylvania, and catch that rock and roll show. We got the Sawtells tuned in. You Sawtells, y'all know what I'm talking about. God bless the new breed, but aren't the old people pretty good at doing what we do when it comes to rock and roll? Can I get an amen on that? Can I get a huzzah? Can I get a hallelujah? Can I get people out there to testify? James Pogo, you know what I'm talking about. Yes, James Pogo, the Tough Skins, another super fine side project of Poopy Necropond. Look it up. Look up the Tough Skins and their very devolved album. Also, consorting with Poopy Necropond is my good friend Food Fortunata. See, maybe the young people get less tongue-tied than we oldsters, but we always manage to get the words out. Food Fortunata, who's gotten a pretty good amount of airtime here on Tent Talks Tunes with his various creative endeavors. So yeah, man, April 5th in Youngstown at the West Side Bowl. Maybe we'll even do some bowling before the show. If this is indeed a bowling alley, am I right? Is West Side Bowl a functioning bowling alley? I heard rumors that it was. I really hope it is, because in my entire career, and let me think, make sure I got the facts right about this. Yes, I am correct in remembering that I've only played one bowling alley ever in my entire... No, sorry, 2. I've played 2 bowling alleys. 2 bowling alleys. One in Hartford, Connecticut as a solo, and the other one in the great city of Cleveland, Ohio, with Ultra Money. And the bowling alley that we played in Cleveland, I believe it was called the Maple Lanes. And it was an old school. When I say old school, I mean old school, as in hasn't changed since the 1950s type of local towny bar in the front. And in the back room, four, maybe 5 bowling lanes. Like this mini little bowling alley in the back room behind this old school, old town bar. And it was fantastic. They didn't even have automatic pin setters. They had to have genuine human being pin setters to stand over the pins when they got knocked over and the frame was over. Somebody would reach down and set up the pins. I mean, how cool is that? So I've definitely played 2 bowling alleys in my day, and I really hope that West Side Bowl is what I think it is, so I can make it 3 bowling alleys. 3 bowling alleys that I've played in my day. Yes, that's what I want. I want to be able to say I've played 1, 2, 3 bowling alleys in my career. So hopefully April 5th will be the day to add to that tally. April 6th, and you know what? I just told you all wrong. The West Side Bowl is in Youngstown, Ohio. April 5th, West Side Bowl, Youngstown, Ohio. York is the next day. The 6th at the Skid Row Garage. That is 3 chances to rock out with Anti-Scene. All I can tell you is we're playing 3 not identical sets. They're not completely different sets every night, but if you go to all 3 shows, you will hear a different song order every night. You'll hear songs played on some nights and not on others. We really try to mix things up when we go out live. It keeps it interesting. Keeps us sharp. And that's what I like. I really don't like repeating myself. And with Anti-Scene, we don't like to repeat ourselves either. It's always full speed ahead, on to the next horizon, breaking down the next door. Can I get an amen on that one as I drink my jug of Danbury tap water? What else on the bulletin board? Well, we're going to go to the immediate future, a little more immediate than the next item on my right, on my left. May 4th, the Danbury Record and CD Expo, in which I, along with my partner Noise in the Attic, bring in an entire room full of music dealers. And we wheel and deal. We buy, we sell, we trade. Records, tapes, CDs, videos, collectibles, memorabilia, all the fun stuff that comes in the rock and roll business. May 4th at the VFW Hall number 149 in downtown Danbury. 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. 3 is the magic number. I will have not 1, not 2, but 3 tables full of the aforementioned records, tapes, CDs, videos, cassettes, whatever memorabilia I got. I am there to lighten my load and make your load commensurately and proportionately that much heavier. It's what we call fair trade. So May 4th, Danbury Record and CD Expo. And that goes right into the next few days after that. May 8th, the next round of Anti-Scene shows. May 8th, Atlanta, Georgia. May 9th, Chattanooga, Tennessee. May 10th, Wilmington, North Carolina. May 11th, Raleigh, North Carolina. Lots and lots of rock and roll. I've said many a time, and I'm sure you have heard me say this, I have had 2 wonderful career choices in my life that I've been able to follow. 1, music retail. 2, rock stardom. And I consider myself extremely fortunate to be able to pursue both of them, basically full time. And I thank all of you guys for supporting me and my fellow travelers in our endeavors. So let's talk about a couple other things. Nothing to check in the mailbox this week. It's been a slow mail week, but that's okay. I've been keeping plenty busy. even without a full mailbox. Oh boy, I got a lot going on. I teased this a little while ago, a couple weeks back. I showed you guys this cassette that I made that's got my terrible handwriting on it, this scrawl. It's labeled Malcolm Tint G.G. Allen Psych Spec. That is G.G. Allen Psychological Speculation. In the upcoming future, because of course all of the future is upcoming, I'm going to do an entire episode of Tent Talks Tunes dedicated to the psychology of G.G. Allen. And I was thinking that I was sort of aiming for tonight to be the night that I do that. But, you know, the more I think about it and the more I review my notes, my dictated notes and my written notes, it is a labyrinth plumbing the depths of G.G. Allen's psychology. It's like every time that I think I've got everything lined up and I'm ready to talk about it, I'll think of something else. Just yesterday it was, I thought of a couple other things that related to other aspects of G.G. Allen's psychology. And some of you might ask, well, old man Tent, you creep, what gives you the right to do a psychological profile on G.G. Allen? Well, I'll tell you, the right that I have is that I knew the guy, and you know, I'm gonna be the last guy in the room ever to say that we were best buds or that we hung out or we were super duper pals. We were not. We knew each other. We had a very friendly working relationship. We hung out a couple of times. We talked on the phone a lot. We corresponded a lot. I saw him play live a couple of times. I booked a show for him. So yeah, I was, you know, somewhere in his orbit, probably around like Neptune, or I'm not going to say the obvious planet name you're thinking of. I'm not going to say it. You're welcome to type it in if you want, but I'm not going to say it. So in the G.G. Allen orbit, I was probably out there around Neptune somewhere, and that's fine. But the thing I have, I think what I can actually bring to the table, besides my own firsthand experience, is the fact that I have spent a lot of quality time, both in person and on the phone and via the internet or whatever media you have. I've spent a lot of time talking to and hanging out with people who did know the man and really did have close relationships with him, and listening to their stories and making the connections and putting two and two together and sort of weaving this narrative together. Fascinating stuff. And I've always had a really, really deep interest in psychology in general. You know, I'm an armchair psychologist. What can I tell you? I blame it on my high school psychology teachers. They were great. Mr. Cotton and Ms. Herschel, if you guys are out there, hi. So I think that's why I have the sheer gall, the effrontery to put myself in public offering a G.G. Allen psychological profile. And part of it, too, is an answer to a lot of the, like, you know, YouTube psychologists and Wikipedia and all of these people that Jeff Clayton refers to as GG PhDs who want to offer their opinions, but without having access to all of the resources that I have had access to. So I think that what I can offer is a somewhat more informed opinion as to what made that guy tick. And so because of that, you know, I just keep having to push my broadcast date back because there's just more and more and more to consider. So we're working on it. It is going to happen. It's like everything in my life. I've got probably 450 burners on my stove, and every one of them has a cooking pot that's boiling over to various degrees at various temperatures. And, you know, the way I operate is I flit from one to another as the inspiration hits me. And, you know, eventually one will be cooked fully and I can take it off the pot and serve it to everybody. And then there's others stewing and simmering, and, you know, another one will come completion, and I'll take it off the stove and serve it to everybody. That's kind of the way it goes. And that's what's going on with this one. I ain't going to serve it until I'm confident that I have crossed all of my I's and dotted all of my T's. So if you have a calendar, mark it down, but don't put it on a specific date. Mark it on your calendar, but I don't guarantee any specific date. That's what's going on with that. James Pogo. Always wondered how bad Gigi smelled. Well, he did smell pretty bad. I truthfully can say that the first time I met him, the smell did hit me. What's weird is that I don't remember exactly how it smelled. You know, they say that once you smell something, you never forget it. But I don't honestly remember the exact aroma that Gigi was putting out that fateful day in 1987. But I do remember that he smelled bad. So there you go. Let's see. Dennis Chunga Chiklinski, an old-time trashy, is chiming in. Yes, and he is making a comment on the Gigi Allen finger painting that hung on the wall of my store, Trash American style, for many years. Yes, the finger painting. All you guys got to do is look at the live comments here on Tent Talks Tunes and see what Dennis has to say about that. Dennis was there. He knows exactly what the score is on that one. Got the latest issue of Outsider magazine, a fine print magazine. I wrote an article for this very issue about the Discharge debacle. You guys have heard me talk about Discharge on Tent Talks Tunes quite a bit, but always about the incredibly disastrous, career-destroying album, Grave New World. That's the stuff that fascinates me. Everybody knows the classic archetypal Discharge records. Why? Hear nothing, see nothing, say nothing. Those are the only two actual full lengths they ever did. All of the singles, Fight Back, etc. And of course that stuff is fantastic, but it's when things go wrong that I get morbidly fascinated. And I have always had a deep, deep, deep interest in Grave New World by Discharge, which is where the wheels came completely off of their wagon. So an entire article about that in Outsider magazine. This is a free publication. Holly, thank you for publishing Outsider for all these years. Anybody who places a mail order with me on my TPOS store on Discogs, eBay, or Bandcamp, I will throw in a copy of Outsider magazine so you can read not only my article on the Discharge debacle, but also the other fine punk rock topics covered therein. And I will probably also have some at the Danbury Record and CD Expo that I will place in your hand personally, if you're the type to read a newsprint punk rock zine from the Hudson Valley of New York. I think you are. Prost! You know, it's funny, I tossed that big stack of newspapers down on the ground and it made an awful thump. Who would have thought that would be the cue for... You're guessing it. You know what's about to happen. You know who this guy is. It's Harry the Cat, who is almost guaranteed to make an appearance here on Tent Talks Tunes. I doubt that anybody would say that Tent Talks Tunes is a cute show until this guy shows up. When Harry the Cat makes his obligatory appearance, it gets cute real fast, and no one's going to pay attention to me. No one's going to listen to a word I say. We're just going to look at this guy right here. Yeah, my boy. Listen to that guy go. Oh, yeah. Another one of those pots that's on my 450 burner stove is, of course, the Harry the Cat CD, cassette, and 8-track. No, I have not forgotten. I've already made the 8-track. It's a matter of editing some more recordings of him purring, as you can hear here. More recordings of him purring that I can turn into the aforementioned cassette and CD. And I think I'm going to go ahead and be a complete and utter nut job and actually have the CDs professionally manufactured and shrink-wrapped and offered to the general public. Hey, my compatriot and anti-scene Walt Wheat from Hattiesburg, Mississippi says, Harry the Cat live from Danderberry, Danderberry, Connecticut. Yes. Walt is a man of many puns, and that's a good one right there. You can tell it's getting warm here in Danbury because this old guy is losing lots of weight in hair. And it doesn't matter how much I brush him every day. He just keeps shedding. Shedding like mad. The joys of cat ownership, they say. Anyway, Harry is here, and Harry is going to be the newest TPOS recording star as soon as I, feel the inspiration to go over to the stove and stir that pot a little bit and get it out. I actually, for the 8-track, I've already got the cover art ready. I got the liner notes ready. It's just a matter of editing together some more purrs for a product that you will want to consume. So yeah, enough of that bourgeois. Let's get to the meat of the matter. What have I been listening to lately? Oh man, so much. So much. Salute! The Sawtells say, how about a rock cat comp in the future? Vaughn, none of your damn business, is saying, brought to you by the man who unleashed the Jeff Leppard EP. Well, you know, Vaughn, that's a valid criticism. That is a completely valid criticism. I will accept at least 50% of the responsibility for the Jeff Leppard EP. I will have to thoroughly lay the blame for the other 50% on Mr. Jeff Clayton, who may or may not be Jeff Leppard. That's a highly classified state secret over at the country of anti-scene. But let's just say that in this crazy-ass world, all things are possible. Yes, Vaughn has brought up the Jeff Leppard EP, which was willfully designed to be the worst record ever made. I think we succeeded. I think we did a pretty good job at releasing the worst record ever made. And I wonder if the Jeff Leppard EP has been posted on YouTube or is anywhere out there on any kind of digital platform so you can actually hear it and hear how bad it is. Vaughn, since you brought this up, this is all your fault. I'm going to charge you with the responsibility of looking for the Jeff Leppard EP anywhere on the internet. And if you find it, please post a link so the people can actually hear how bad it is. Walt Wheat wants to know if Jeff Leppard is even worse than Burzum. Well, this is a true fact. You might find this to be very funny considering I just got off the road with U.S. black metal originators Profanatica. I've never heard Burzum. I've never heard them. I know nothing about them. How bad are they? Someone's got to explain this to me because I don't know anything. I know nothing. Small irony, but not really ironic. And I'll go ahead and lay it right here on the table. I will stick a fork in this factoid and wave it in front of the lens for all to see. I am not a black metal fan. I am not an aficionado of black metal. I'm a Profanatica fan. I love Profanatica. I remember them from the very first days when they started the band and their very first shows in Danbury. That was my first and really only exposure to black metal for a very long time. So I've always been a fan of Profanatica, and I've always enjoyed playing the music of Profanatica, and I had a blast touring with those guys and playing that music. As far as a genre goes, I never really paid that much attention to it. Like, if I'm going to pay attention to metal, it's either going to be classic metal or death metal, or like maybe some kind of symphonic metal. You know, I heard a lot of really cool opening bands for us on our most recent tour that fall into some of those categories, who I really enjoyed. But as far as taking a deep dive into black metal, it's not my wheelhouse, really. There you have it. That's the thing. I'm into Profanatica, not necessarily black metal per se. Vaughn has taken up the challenge. Vaughn says, sure thing. All right, Vaughn. We're going to find out what's what and who's who on the internet as far as Jeff Leppard goes. I just want to see if anybody actually had the sheer bravery to post it somewhere. Very curious about that. So what has Old Man Tent been playing lately? Well, this came up the other day because I posted these albums on the Destructo Central Anti-Scene fan page. Some Andy Griffith. We got the stars of Hee Haw. And we got Archie Campbell, who was a big star on Hee Haw. And I just randomly found these when I was going through my vast inventory of used vinyl. And immediately had great memories of Sundays. Sunday at my grandma and granddad's house. Sunday was more or less fun day. My grandparents were very active in the Methodist Church in Florida. My granddad was a lay leader at Opelika United Methodist Church, and my grandma was the treasurer there. So not every Sunday, but a lot of Sundays, we would all go to church, and I would suffer through the service because I was like, 3, 4, 5 years old. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't know what any of this was all about. I just knew it was a bunch of old people listening to some other old guy go on and on and on and on about something I did not understand. And in fact, my mom, to this very day, my mom has a treasured artifact. A treasured artifact from my childhood at Opelika United Methodist Church. To keep me and my brothers occupied during the services, my mom would give us scraps of paper and crayons or pencils and stuff so we could write and draw and doodle during the service. And during one service, I wrote some immortal words on a piece of paper and gave them to my mom. And my mom kept that piece of paper all these years. 5 words that I wrote on a piece of paper during a church service when I was, I guess, old enough to write, but too young for me to remember actually doing it. A piece of paper that I doodled on during the church services saying, "Get me out of here." What can I say? That's all I remember about Opelika United Methodist Church. The fun part came after the services were over and my grandparents were done with all the various church business and, taking care of the books and whatnot. We would all go back to their house where Grandma would cook up a big old supper and the TV would be on in the dining room where we would eat the overcooked mushy pot roast and the boiled into oblivion green beans and the collards and the black-eyed peas and, the pork and beans, all the stuff that you had on a Sunday after church. There would be first professional wrestling. Professional wrestling would be on the TV. And then later in the evening, you guessed it, the show of choice was Hee Haw. Never missed an episode of Hee Haw. And so I have very fond memories of Hee Haw and the stars thereof. I just love that cornpone humor. So I found this album. I found the Archie Campbell album. And, sort of Hee Haw adjacent, these 2 Andy Griffith albums. And I'll tell you, man, this stuff is funny. It's legit funny. Some of it is aged better than other bits of it. Some of it is woefully, dreadfully corny, but that, of course, is kind of the whole point, you know? The Andy Griffith stuff is great. This guy was seriously funny, man. And so was Archie Campbell, for that matter. And, yeah, good stuff. I just came across these and got more than a little charge of nostalgia and appreciation for the humor therein. And actually some of the music, too. Andy Griffith dares to do a couple of musical numbers on this one. They reminded me of Tennessee Ernie Ford's stuff that he did before he got religious. There's one album by Tennessee Ernie Ford called Old Rockin' Urn that is fantastic. It's kind of like proto rock and roll. And it's got the best version of Shotgun Boogie you're ever going to hear. So I haven't dragged out the Tennessee Ernie Ford album yet, but I think that tonight I'm going to add that to the pile of things I've been listening to. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This here. Andy Griffith. I'll tell you something about Andy Griffith, too, that I didn't get until fairly recently. When I was in about 9th grade, he was the commercial spokesman for Ritz Crackers. And there was a whole series of commercials in which Andy Griffith would wrap the commercial up by saying, good cracker, good cracker. And it took me, I didn't get it. I just thought it was some stupid commercial jingle. Even to the point when one of the black kids who I went to high school with in 9th grade came up to me one day and said, good cracker, good cracker. I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't get it. I just thought it was some kind of really bad joke relating to a TV commercial. Swear to God, guys, I didn't get it until just recently. But now that I get it, I think it's hilarious. I believe that the kid who said that to me back in high school was Eric Dykes. Eric Dykes, a.k.a. Dr. Cool, who I always called Dr. Fool because we were always jousting. And he called me Good Cracker. Eric Dykes, if you're out there, it took me almost 40 years, maybe longer, but I got it. So now, Eric, I am actually laughing at your joke. Ha ha, ha 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 ha. It takes me a while to catch on, but once I do, I do catch on. I do catch on. You just got to give me some time. Just got to give me time. What else have I been playing? Well, I showed you guys a few weeks ago a couple of books I got in the mail by my good friend Scott Parker. Scott Parker of Waterbury, Connecticut, is the author of a long series of very detailed, utterly fan-driven, and meticulously scholarly books about Frank Zappa. And I believe me, guys and gals, I understand completely if you say that Frank Zappa is not your thing. Brothers and sisters, I'm here to testify that I get it. I get it completely if Zappa's not your thing. Zappa, I'm not even sure if Zappa's my thing. I can only take so much Zappa, but I love Frank Zappa. Man, I love Zappa. Zappa's great. So I've been dragging out my Frank Zappa records. First I read both of Scott Parker's books, and then I read the Barry Miles biography of Frank Zappa, which really portrays him as being an extremely unpleasant, he's an asshole. And I know that that book is a bone of contention amongst Zappa fans, and apparently there's a new bio coming out, which might offer a different narrative. I don't know. But, hey, add him to the list, right? Pablo Picasso was never called an asshole, but apparently he was one. And you can go through the entire list of creative types who are total jerks. And I hate to give Bruce Springsteen credit for much, if anything at all. But Bruce was the first one I heard or read who said, trust the art, not the artist. And that really is true, because if you start canceling every artist or musician who ever lived because of their crappy, stupid, disgusting behavior, you'd have nothing left. You'd have no art left. You'd have no music. I mean, where do you draw the line, you know? I mean, it's almost infinite, the number of complete jerks who made incredible music and incredible art. So I digress. He's not everybody's cup of tea. I can only take so much of him. But when I get in the mood, I will play me some Frank Zappa. So this is one album right here by Frank Zappa. I think this is my one absolute guaranteed go-to album by Zappa and or the Mothers. Absolutely free. His second album. I think this is where he really, really started to fire on all cylinders. This is where the collage technique really came into play. The production is great. The lyrics are like spot on without a lot of the bitterness that later crept into the equation later on. It's good. He designed the cover. That's all Frank Zappa graphic and visual art on the outside and the inside. It's a complete package. It's a great package. And I'll tell you guys, I just love the original silver and purple Verve label. I've done a lot of showing and a lot of telling of original Verve records. This really harkens back to the day when the original Mothers albums and the original Velvet Underground records were impossible to find. They were out of print. Either nobody wanted them, or people wanted them so badly that they would get snapped up immediately on the rare occasion you'd find one at a record swap meet. So just being able to see one of those records and opening it up and finding the beautiful Verve mid-century modern design label was always a thrill. And to this day, it's still a thrill. I get a big kick out of this label. Masterpiece of graphic design. So I'm always happy to put on one of the original 5, if you count the compilation Mother Mania albums, on the turntable and rocking them out. And I actually played a really amazing videotape that I have of Zappa's 1988 band, a live TV broadcast from Spain. And that 1988 band was badass. I mean, they were kind of like Elvis's bands in the 1970s. Almost every element of music is represented, and the whole band, verging on an orchestra, was under complete control of the conductor, who in this case was Zappa. They could do just about anything, and he could put them through the paces with all of his bizarre, twisted time changes and the huge chords that he would write for 5 players and the complicated vocal parts. They could do it all. And it's kind of the same thing as I said before. I find it very difficult to sit through an entire 2-hour concert of it. But for about the first hour or so, it's amazing. It really is. So a lot of Zappa. A lot of Zappa on the turntable and VCR these days. Here's someone else I've been checking out. Every once in a while, I decide to break out some of the stuff by Mr. Nelson Slater. Nelson Slater from Cincinnati, Ohio. Who is Nelson Slater, you might ask? And why do I have this autographed album of his? Well, Nelson Slater is a dude from Cincinnati, Ohio, as mentioned before. Probably his most obvious claim to fame is that in the early 60s, he was roommates with a guy in Syracuse named Lou Reed. And legend has it that Nelson Slater let Lou Reed borrow his guitar, which Lou Reed then used to go jam with a guy named Sterling Morrison, which planted the very earliest seeds of the Velvet Underground. Fast forward about a decade-ish, and Lou Reed produced and helped do some of the writing on an album called Wild Angel by Nelson Slater. Came out on RCA Records. That's the front. By the way, that is not Nelson Slater, but that is from the 1970s. It's a really cool album. And Mr. Nelson Slater has never stopped making music. He continues to this very day. And how do I describe it? I describe it kind of the same way I describe Gary Forney's music. Gary Forney and Nelson Slater are cut from very similar cloth. Each one of them is a complete original. Each one of them has an absolutely pure artistic vision. And what just happened to my screen? Hold on a second. Oh, I see. I threw the album down and nudged the camera. Let's try this again. There I am. Looks like I'm coming back. Boy, the technology. Anyway, Nelson Slater, very much like Gary Forney, completely original, absolutely unique, 100% dedicated to his musical vision. And like Gary Forney, I've released a couple of albums by Nelson Slater and his band, Steam Age Time Giant. This one here recorded live in Brooklyn by Steam Age Time Giant with a full band. I've got it on cassette and CD. And a solo set of his recorded live on my late lamented radio show called Mr. Tent's Wild Ride. That is Nelson Slater with his magic keyboard going out live over the airwaves back in the day when WNHU actually was a radio station that was worth a hoot. WNHU has not been worth a hoot for a number of years now, which is why I'm not a DJ on WNHU. Anyway, when there actually was such a thing as original content on WNHU, I had Nelson Slater do a live performance, and it was magic. A highlight of my radio career. And so I released it with his permission on cassette. So if you're a fan of Gary Forney, or you dig the Gary Forney aesthetic, you might want to check out some Nelson Slater and or Steam Age Time Giant. Like everything else on the TPOS label, I stand behind it. I like it. I dig it. And I even listen to stuff by Nelson Slater that's not on TPOS, including this really cool, I love this kind of stuff, man. This is a Nelson Slater release. This is a hand-cut record, a hand-lathed record made on a paper plate. Signed, of course. And Nelson is very much into a very raw, verging on lo-fi, sonic aesthetic. And this record is a perfect example of that. It's cool. I love these kinds of things. So Nelson, if you're out there watching, Mazel Tov, sir. I cannot wait to hear what you do next. What else have I been playing? I've been playing a lot of stuff, man. A lot of stuff. This came out of the blue, sort of an unexpected bolt out of the blue. I don't know why, but yesterday I was coming in from my daily run. I like to run around the block a few times every morning. And I had a mad craving. When I say mad, I mean mad craving to listen to a little bit Susie and the Banshees. Oh, yes. I don't know how much I've waxed rhapsodic over Susie and the Banshees here on Tent Talks Tunes, but by cracky, they are one of my all-time favorite bands. Effin' love Susie and the Banshees. They were complete masters of the studio as an instrument. All kinds of wild production techniques and wacky sounds and bizarre instrumentation. Their graphics are fantastic. Every one of their albums is a work of art. The covers, the inner sleeves. On the UK pressings, the labels themselves. Beautiful. Just beautiful. The US issues on Geffen did not have any of these awesome graphic arts, and the covers were not printed as beautifully as the UK pressings. And they also had UPC codes on the back. Man, I love Susie and the Banshees. And Walt Wheat says that they were the dark horse act at the first Lollapalooza. I would agree with that. I would agree with that completely. I think they outclassed by far most of the acts on the first Lollapalooza. Hyena, featuring Robert Smith from The Cure on guitar. Brilliant. These three albums all feature absolutely unsung guitar hero John McGeoch. John McGeoch. John McGeoch is, to me, like Ollie Housel. And you might have heard me talk about Ollie Housel in the past. Ollie Housel was from the great British band Pato. And was later in a band, I want to say Colosseum. I don't know if that's right. But he was peripherally involved with the Rutles and the Bonzo Dog Band. Ollie Housel was described as being, if not the greatest guitar player in the world, then certainly one of the top two. I don't know if I would disagree with that. And I put John McGeoch pretty much up there in that rarefied stratosphere of incredible genius guitar innovators who never got his due. Check out his work with Susie and the Banshees. Check out Magazine, the first three Magazine records that he plays on. And even the later stuff he did with Public Image Limited. John McGeoch. That's your homework, guys. And yeah, I've been marking out to some Susie and the Banshees. I will probably continue to do so tonight after I sign off. Andy Griffith, Tennessee Ernie Ford, and Susie and the Banshees. I predict that those will all be rattling the windows later this evening as I roll up my sleeves and get to work. Packing mail order, assembling cassettes, and getting ready for my road trip with the almighty Anti-Scene in these great shows, April 4th, 5th, and 6th in Philly, Youngstown, Ohio, and York, Pennsylvania. And that just about wraps it up for me, Malcolm Tent, here in this week's episode of Tent Talks Tunes. Woo! I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Always a pleasure to serve you heaping helpings of musical mayhem and merriment. I like to do it every week, circumstances permitting. As mentioned before, I will not be on the air next week unless next Wednesday I find myself in a situation with good Wi-Fi. If that's the case, then I really want to do a live from the field musical roundtable with my compatriots in Anti-Scene, in which the four of us sit around and just talk music for a little while. So that's, circumstances permitting, what I want to do next week for 10 Talks Tunes. If it doesn't work, hey, at least we thought of doing it. And I'll have to be on the air, as usual, after that again. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. Hope you all have a good time doing what you do. Really hope to see some of you folks upcoming in Pennsylvania and Ohio. And then in about 6 weeks' time in Georgia and Tennessee and North Carolina. And if not there, then who knows? Somewhere out there in the so-called real world. I'm ready if you are. So until we meet again, this is indeed Malcolm Tent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.